Okay, this is the last video in the linear graph series. So if you haven't watched the previous video on substitution, please watch that, because in that video I go through what simultaneous equations are, what it means to solve them, and why it's important. So here's another method of solving simultaneous equations. Keep in mind that throughout this process, we have two lines, because each of these equations represents a line, and we're trying to find out where these two lines cross. So what is the coordinates of the point where they cross? What that means is we need to find x and we need to find y. So without any further ado, let's begin. Now, the way you do this, the way you find x and y here, is by adding or subtracting entire equations. So we're trying to get rid of either x or y. It doesn't matter which one. We're trying to eliminate either x or y. And let me show you one way of doing it. So we want the number in front of x or y to be the same in both equations, which is, so this 3, the number in front of y, that's the coefficient of y. So we want the coefficients of y or x to be the same. So we can actually make another equation, equation 3, which is 3 times equation 2. So let's multiply this whole equation by 3. We can do that because we're multiplying both sides by 3. So that's 6x minus 3y equals 4. And you can see there's 3y here and 3y here. Now, we're going to add equation 1 and equation 3. And to do that, we just add up the x's and then add up the y's and add up the right-hand side. And the reason for doing that is because if I add up 3y and negative 3y, that will cancel each other out. And we'll be left with, well, we've got x plus 6x is 7x, so we'll be left with 7x. There'll be no y's anymore because these cancel out. 7x equals 6. Okay, now if you're thinking, is this even legal? Can I add equations? You can, and let me show you. Let's have an equation 2 equals 2 and 5 equals 5. Let's add them up and see if it's right. 2 plus 5 is 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. Okay, so we can add whole equations and get an equation that is still true. Now, just to recap, we have multiplied this second equation by 3 so that we could get a negative 3 here and a positive 3 here, because we knew that when we added up the equations, the y's would cancel out and would only have x's left. So looking over here, here's our final equation, 7x equals 6. And hopefully you can see this is a great equation because we can solve it to find out what x is very easily. All we have to do is divide both sides by 7. And we get, well, the 7's cancel out here. We get x equals 6 over 7. Okay, now let's, well, I guess the question is, have we finished? And if you watch the previous video, hopefully you're saying, no, we haven't finished because we found the x coordinate. That's great. We need to find the y coordinate. And to do that is actually the same as the other method. You have to substitute this back into the equation. So it doesn't matter which equation we choose. let's choose equation 1 because it looks a bit simpler. So we'll write out equation 1, but when we get up to x, we write 6 over 7 instead. So x is at the start, we write 6 over 7 plus 3y equals 2. Okay, now I chose an example with a little bit trickier numbers this time because sometimes when you're doing simultaneous equations, you do get fractions. And so we do have to know sometimes, if you want to do the harder questions, how to add and subtract fractions. So if I had 1 plus 3y equals 2, hopefully you would say, I need to get rid of the 1. To do that, I'll subtract 1 from both sides. And this is very similar, except instead of a 1, we've got 6 over 7. So we subtract 6 over 7 from both sides. This fraction is a number, just like 1 is a number. All right, so let's do that. Let's subtract 6 over 7 from this side. That means we'll get rid of it, and we'll subtract it from this side as well. So we subtract it from this side, we get rid of it, then we only have 3y on the left. And on the right, we've got 2 minus 6 over 7. Now, the first thing to know is how do I subtract these two if I've got one of them's a fraction, one of them's not. And this is probably a revision for you, but I have to make this into a fraction first of all. So let's just do this subtraction over here. We'll make it into a fraction by dividing it by 1. But this still doesn't, we still can't really subtract these two. The problem is they have different denominators, so it doesn't really make sense. I have to times 1 by 7 to get to 7, because I want this to be the same denominator as that, which means I have to times top and bottom by 7. And let's actually do that multiplication. We'll have 14 divided by 7 minus 6 over 7. And now because they have the same denominator, it makes sense to subtract them. So 14, we subtract the tops, the numerators. 14 minus 6 is 8. So our final answer is 8 over 7. And that's what we can write here. All right, now finally, we have to divide both sides by 3 to get rid of the 3. And again, you need to know how to deal with this situation in terms of fractions. So to do that, let's do it over here. 8 over 7 divided by 3. Again, I can make this 3 into a fraction, so let's do that. And then hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense to you. Well, I just wrote exactly the same thing. Now, if you want to divide a fraction, you change the divide to a times and flip the fraction. If you need revision on this, that's fine. A lot of people forget this stuff. So you might want to look up some dividing fraction exercises on the internet and see if they have answers, and see if you can do this kind of thing. Same for addition and subtraction. But now we have 8 over 7 times 1 over 3. We just times the tops and the bottoms because that's how you multiply fractions. We'll have 8 over 21. So that is our final answer. On the right-hand side, these three cancel out, by the way, so we've only got y. On the right-hand side, we've got 8 over 21. Now, this is the last video in the series. This is probably a little bit tricky, and so you might want to re-watch some of this. We're not done though. This is the final thing that we have to do, because sometimes you might look at some equations and getting the coefficients to be the same of x or y is actually quite tricky. So let's call this equation 1 and equation 2, and let's, for a change, let's get rid of the x's. So we need to make these two coefficients the same. And I can't multiply 2 by anything to get to 5. So I actually have to find a common multiple of 2 and 5. I have to find a number that's on the times tables of both 2 and 5 so that I can make the coefficients that number. Hopefully you can see that the number has to be 10. So I need to multiply everything in this equation by something that's going to get me 10 over here. So equation number 3, we'll multiply this all by 5 because that's, I have multiplied 2 by 5 to get 10. So we'll have 10x plus, we'll times this by 5, 15y equals times this by 5, 10. We'll have an equation 4. We have to times everything by something that's going to make this 10. So that has to be 2. We'll times everything by 2. 10x times this by 2 is, we get 8y equals, times this by 2, 8. Now, last time, now hopefully you can see the coefficients are the same, that's great. Last time, we added the two equations together because we knew that that would get rid of the y's. But this time, if I add these two equations together, I will get 20x. And that doesn't get rid of the x's at all, so that's bad. So in elimination, you can add the equations or subtract the equations. Okay, so let's subtract them. We'll subtract everything on here from here. So let's subtract the x's. 10x minus 10x is 0, so we get 0 here. 15y plus 8y, minus 8y, we get 7y. And 10 minus 8, we get 2. And I'm not going to keep going here. Well, we'll just solve the equation very quickly. Divide both sides by 7. And then we have y equals 2 over 7. Now, keep in mind you're still not finished because you still need to find the x coordinate, but we will finish the video here because I think by now I've talked for too long and you hopefully are ready to do some questions on elimination. If you're not ready yet, rewatch some of the video, but if you don't think that's going to be helpful, then please leave a comment and I'll try and get back to you. All right, well, I hope you found this series useful, and if you would like to rewatch any of them, or if there's some videos that you missed, feel free to check that out in the playlist. All right, I will see you another time.